Windows recall has been delayed some more, but is it gone for good? Well, at the time we're recording this video, yesterday, the Copilot Plus PCs have started to ship and to upgrade to existing computers capable of running the Copilot Plus program. What does this mean now and in the future? Welcome back to Switch to Linux, where we teach you about Linux, switching to Linux, and why you might want to. And yes, for the people who say, you talk about Windows a lot for a Linux channel. Yeah, this falls under the category of why you might want to. And FYI, check our video catalog. We have less than 50 videos about Windows and about 3,500 plus videos about Linux. So, whatever. Anyway, just addressing that particular comment that I see a couple times in my videos. But let's go ahead and chat about what is going on in the news. Of course, this article was from yesterday. Windows 11 24H2 is released for the public, but only on Copilot Plus PCs. And of course, the official ship date for the computers running the Snapdragon X was June 18th as well. So we are getting today our very first look at some of the computers. So stay tuned for more videos about what is coming up with that. Now, what has happened, though, is the update is mostly a don't write home about this because they were pinning everything on this latest update to Windows Recall, save, of course, for the few other controversial things we talked about, like this is the very first version of Windows that forces encryption even on home users and things like that. Now, to be clear, Windows 11 24H2 is not rolling out to everyone right now. It's going to roll out later on in the year for other computers, but those computer rollouts are going to include the things like data encryption on home, Windows Home Editions, not for computers already set up, but for all future computers. And anytime you might have to reset your computer, it will go back to encryption by default. Now, the other features they have in there, of course, pushing more ideas of Windows Hello and things like that, which is certainly part of one of the things they want to do. But their biggest thing was going to be Windows Recall, but they received so much backlash that they have delayed it. And we even have more news has come out. Now, they did say here that Microsoft delays Recall again and will not debut the new Copilot with the new Copilot PCs. And the articles talking about the Copilot Plus PCs without Recall are mostly underwhelming. They were, again, hinging everything on this, but it turns out that Microsoft kept the entire thing completely under wraps, even from their own team. So in this article here, now this article is a little over a week old from Windows Central, and this article here has a lot of neat things. Now they do have their update. So the three things that they're doing in their update, the first is they're making Recall opt-in, not opt-out. So I'm going to guess that it's going to be highly recommended to enable it. But, you can say no. It might break a couple fingers. Guido might come for your kneecaps, but you can say no. All right. Now, the second thing they are doing is they're requiring Windows Hello to enable Recall, which puts it under a little bit of a compatibility layer, like security layer, so that even a system admin may not be able to access that data, may not be able to. If you're more familiar with Windows security protocols, let me know if that is true. And of course, the third is they're using just-in-time decryption. So we talked about they were secure with the at-rest encryption, which is what effectively behind rolling out data encryption even on home users, which is a colossally dumb idea. But now they're also using just-in-time. That is what I described on the previous videos, where my computer system is encrypted, but my KeePassXC password file is also encrypted. So my full disk data encryption is the example of at-rest encryption. But then once you get into the system, you would still need a different password to access the KeePass database. That is just-in-time encryption. So they are enabling just-in-time. So these three things together, opt-in, require Windows Hello, which is effectively their passkey system, and just-in-time decryption. This does do a good job of securing the data locally, but it does still raise some other further questions, and we will get into that in just a moment. Now, a lot of this is just the stuff we've already covered. Now, one of the factors this article focuses on is that Windows has really lost trust. These are just some of the things they've talked about, and in fact, we have talked about on this channel in recent months, requiring a Windows account to set up Windows 11, and they're slowly closing all of the loopholes that lets you get in and do that. They're advertising in system level interfaces like start menus and widgets and settings in the File Explorer. They refuse to acknowledge user app defaults like browsers. They are shoehorning Microsoft Network into Windows, MSN, I think that's what it stands for, into Windows. They're replacing native Windows apps with slower, uglier web apps, and they're using full screen prompts to set up OneDrive and Office 365. And now, of course, this come out after this article was originally published, they're bringing back the full screen advertisements to upgrade to Windows 11 for you PC 10 users. So that is really what they are doing that is problematic. So the big challenge is, of course, as we have talked about in our previous videos, is the way that Windows Recall is set up, and with Windows being an open platform where apps can have access to other things on the system, this means that malware can easily steal that database and then scrape the images that it wants at any given point in time, not to mention the fact that your disk is encrypted with an encryption key that is stored on Microsoft servers, so one of these gag warrants could actually hand over the access to your hard drive to any law enforcement without you having any say or knowledge about it. That's problematic. This is just a little bit about the fact people will not trust Windows, but this article brought up some new information I had not seen before, although it is an old article. Windows actually, even internally in their testing, they kept they kept Windows Recall a secret, meaning that even to the internal people working on the various teams of Windows didn't know about it until it was ultimately leaked by a tech journalist, even before it made its way into preview programs. So that is really a challenge that kept it out of the eyes of everybody else. And the reason they did this and what their justified reason is so they could have one giant big reveal, and it couldn't work on PCs other than Copilot Plus, although that's not even true. I had a lot of comments in the last video, and this is something I had known and actually commented on just in passing, but you could actually run Windows Recall on a non-qualified PC. It would be a little bit slower, may not work as well, but you could still do it. And so that raised some serious concerns that they kept this entirely in the dark that ended up being both a privacy and a security nightmare. Now, some other people have mentioned to me as I did this, well, Apple did the same thing. I don't see you getting all riled up. And that's only partially true. There is a service called Rewind.ai that works with the M1, M2 silicone chips from Apple. This is not, to my knowledge, an Apple product. It is listed as its own separate company. It's called Rewind AI. It works on Apple silicone, and it effectively is the same thing. There is a fundamental difference between this and Windows Recall. You see, Windows Recall is a core Windows feature that is installed onto Windows by an update. This is what raises some serious concerns with people, because it means that Windows could push an application that does this mass amount of data collection that was opt-out and opt-in, so you might have a record of everything on your computer without you being aware of it. And that is certainly a problematic thing because it exposes you to malware attacks and to other things that shouldn't be there. And so Rewind.ai is not a core of the operating system. It is a separate app you have to install and a paid subscription. And it does effectively work just like Windows Recall, just for an Apple device. And so if you're talking about utilizing some tool like this, even the article author here at Windows Central, he actually really likes Windows Recall. And he talks about how he used it to go back and restore a paragraph he wrote earlier in the day and delete it, and then thought it'd be a great paragraph for later. later, and rather than coming up with how to rewrite it, he just went back and did it. So there is certainly a use case for a person specifically wants this on their device and is okay with the security and privacy trade-offs of having such a device. So that is really how it should be done, and that's what this Rewind.ai solves. It's not installed on the device by default. So if Windows wants to sell Windows Recall, they should have it in the store, never a part of the operating system. It should be something you explicitly choose to install. Hey, maybe they can give you one of their pop-up ads about it that I won't see because I'm over here on Linux. But the fact of the matter is they're going to be popping up and trying to install it in some future date. They've released the Copilot Plus PCs without Windows Recall, but Windows Recall will be possibly stealthily added later, maybe added later with a lot of fanfare, but being that a lot of people have had a lot of pushback against recall, it looks to me something like Apple's CSAM scanning, which went away, and then they sort of kind of brought it back kind of stealthily in the background under a slightly different name and slightly different protocol. And that is the thing that I fear happening the most in this situation. Now, suppose you want something like this. You're like, wow, that's really good, but hey, I'm already on Linux. Fear not, there is actually a software called Open Recall that is an alternative to Microsoft's Recall. This actually, though, can be run on Windows, Linux, and Mac. It does effectively the same thing, but it is entirely a FOSS software package. So here is the Open Recall GitHub, and you would have to build the package. So I don't think they have releases anyway. Yeah, look under releases, no packages published. So you could actually download the code, and I believe they have down here how to actually get it to work. But they have a lot of, the fact of the matter is this works like the application, but you choose to explicitly install it. In fact, you even have to make it to install it. There you go. So it captures your digital history, regularly taken snapshots, which are essentially screenshots. Text and images within these are analyzed and made searchable. So definitely stuff I don't want or have a need for, but hey, it is something that some people may choose to do. So why choose it? It's 100% open source, allowing you to audit the source code for potential backdoors or privacy invading features. It is cross-platform, works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, gives you freedom to choose it on your preferred operating system. Privacy focus, your data is stored locally, and you have the option to encrypt it with a password for added security. No cloud integration is required, and it is designed to work with a wide range of hardware, unlike solutions that require specified devices. So we have a time travel feature, local first AI, semantic search, and full storage full control over your storage. And then we have a comparative, Open Recall, Windows Recall, and Rewind.ai. So this is the only one that is open sourced. Supported hardware, everything for Open Recall versus Windows. Of course, we did talk about that Windows Recall can be used on other devices as well. This supports all operating systems. Everything is on-device, self-hosted. This is Microsoft's privacy policy, and Rewind AI is connected to ChatGPT, if that's not terrifying. This is free. This is part of Windows 11, and Rewind AI is a monthly subscription. So these are the specific prereqs for it, and then how to install it, how to run it. And then you have more information. Now, I think it's more of a fun gimmick than anything that's super serious, but I don't know. Maybe it is super serious. For me personally, I'm not into this type of application, and I think if you're going to do it right, the Rewind.ai and Open Recall are doing it best. It should be explicitly opt-in. The service is fine for somebody that wants it, but it should never have any form of barrier to have to turn it off, or it should never be sucking system resources without you explicitly wanting it there in the first place. And so this is, to me, what I'm looking at is the big challenge we're going to see with this Open Recall, and that is that, not Open Recall, but with Recall, Windows Recall, is that we're going to see a circumstance or a situation where they could now stealthily add it into your system and maybe even stealthily add it into other systems that do not necessarily meet those minimum requirements. For me, this is just the type of thing Microsoft does. It wants to get in there, do a lot of fun things, see what it can do without stopping to think about what it should do. It certainly doesn't care about its users, and it indeed wants to cram all that stuff in because it has an underlying philosophy that you do not own your computer. This is why I have this channel, Switch Switch to Linux. I created this channel in response to Windows 10 trying to push this policy that effectively said, you're just using the computer that we still own, despite I paid all the money and run it and operate it and all that kind of stuff. I wanted more control over my system, and that is why I installed Linux onto my system. And it was a hairy road at first, and I didn't wipe my system. I had a separate computer. I played around with Linux, actually just using an external hard drive. So you got to think, my old office, I used to have my Windows 7 computer here for my main work. I had a Windows 8 computer here on the side, which I called my media PC. And that one there effectively ran things I would watch, YouTube videos, listen to music, things like that. Just things I could do over there that wouldn't interfere with what I'm doing on the work computer. And then I actually had a Mac back behind me as well, which I did a few client projects on, tested websites on it, and things like that. Well, I took that Windows 8 computer, and what I ended up doing is I just ended up buying an external hard drive, just like this one here. In fact, this might have been the exact hard drive I used. And I plugged that guy right on into the computer, installed Linux on it, and I played around, and I found that everything I did on that computer anyway, I could do with Ubuntu at that time. And so I went ahead and installed Linux on that little drive, and Windows 8 almost never got booted into anymore. And after a while, I just wiped it. So now I still run a similar model. I have one computer, which is either my streaming, or the streaming / video production computer we're recording this on right now, nice dual screen monitor. I also, though, have my left monitor is a workstation and my right monitor is a media station where I do general stuff on the computers and I do videos or music or movies and things like that. That computer is now running Endeavor OS, which is a base of Arch Linux. And I use that one specifically as Arch Linux because I want to be able to have a little bit of control over seeing what the latest packages are going to be without being in an environment where I absolutely have to use those packages for work. Because Arch rolls really fast and I can see the latest package versions as they're coming out before I choose to upgrade my systems. And then my workstation, which is now, the video I just did the other day, is installing my Raspberry Pi 5 as my main web design workstation. That one there, runs MX Linux, which I customize with a Cinnamon desktop environment, and that thing just runs beautifully. And then, of course, we're running Linux Mint on this and on all of my laptops, which is what I use for my main production build when I can. And Linux Mint's not available for the Raspberry Pi. That's why I didn't use that. But I did use Mint's desktop environment, Cinnamon, which is my favorite desktop environment. So the fact of the matter is I made this entire switch to Linux. I dumped all of the Windows computers. I dumped all of the Mac computers. And I can accomplish everything that I need to do, from web design, project management, writing books, producing books, doing the videos, doing all the video editings, all of that running from Linux. And hey, I encounter fewer errors on Linux than I ever encountered on my time on Windows. Though that is why I'm going to encourage you to have a look at Linux, but I would encourage you to do it a little slower like I did. These little hard drives right now are running, I think, $60 for a small one, like a 1 terabyte. You can install Linux on this guy. You can test out Linux on your computer without changing your current system. And I'd encourage you, keep your Windows 10 or whatever computer you have right now for your work, just to make sure you can still be productive. But then as soon as you're done with work, shut that guy down, boot into Linux, and see what Linux can do for you. So I have a video about how you can install Linux. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and end the video by pointing you to my video about 5 ways to try Linux without messing up your current operating system. So have a look at that video on the end here over on YouTube. And with that, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time.